There is a kind of quiet that does not feel lonely. It feels intentional. It is the quiet of someone who learned how to sit with themselves for long periods of time, who discovered that silence can be stable, that being alone does not always mean being empty. For this mind, solitude is not absence. It is structure. It is the space where thoughts can finish without interruption, where emotions can exist without explanation, where nothing unexpected arrives demanding attention. And slowly, subtly, almost invisibly, this quiet becomes preferred. Not because people are unwanted, but because connection feels disruptive to a carefully maintained inner balance. The fear of connection does not arrive as panic. It arrives as hesitation, as delay, as withdrawal that feels logical rather than emotional. This fear is not loud. It is calm, reasonable, well-practiced, and beneath it lives a deep truth. This mind did not choose solitude to avoid life. It chose solitude to survive it. Solitude rarely begins as a goal. It begins as a break from emotional noise, from unpredictability, from having to respond before understanding what is even being felt. At first, solitude feels temporary, a pause after overwhelm, a moment to recalibrate. The body relaxes here, breathing slows, muscles release, thoughts move freely without being shaped for someone else's understanding. In solitude, there is no performance, no emotional translation, no requirement to be consistent or likable or available. Everything is allowed to exist unfinished. The nervous system notices this. It notices how calm arrives without effort, how regulation happens naturally, how silence does not demand anything in return. And so the body remembers, not consciously, not verbally, but deeply. Over time, solitude shifts roles. It stops being recovery. It becomes regulation itself. Connection, by contrast, begins to feel active. Conversation requires attention. Relationships require emotional monitoring. Presence requires adjustment. Even good connection requires energy. And the mind shaped by solitude values equilibrium above all else. So it begins choosing quiet more often, staying home instead of going out, listening instead of sharing, processing emotions privately rather than aloud. Not because others are overwhelming, but because solitude feels efficient. Distance becomes soothing, and the person does not feel lonely. They feel balance. This balance becomes precious. So precious that anything threatening it, even warmth, even intimacy, is approached carefully. This is how solitude becomes safety. No one is born afraid of connection. This pattern is learned, often early, in environments where emotions were unpredictable, where care was inconsistent, where vulnerability did not reliably lead to comfort. The child learns quickly. Depending outward is uncertain. Expressing emotion may not be received. Waiting for others can be risky. So the mind adapts. It turns inward. Self-soothing replaces co-regulation. Observation replaces expression. Endurance replaces asking. This is not weakness. It is intelligence under pressure. The child becomes emotionally observant, quiet, independent, praised for being strong, admired for being mature. And slowly, without anyone saying it directly, a belief forms. Needing less keeps things stable. So emotions are handled privately. Pain is processed silently. Joy is moderated, because joy can invite loss. Connection is not abandoned. It is filtered. Only certain parts are shared. Only after internal processing. Only when the risk feels manageable. Over time, this becomes automatic. The mind no longer asks whether to reach out. It assumes not to. Not because it doesn't want closeness, but because it learned to survive without it. Solitude becomes structure, a predictable emotional architecture. And while it protects, it also narrows. The inner world grows rich. The outer world grows distant. Not hostile, just slightly out of reach. The nervous system does not respond to logic. It responds to patterns. Long before beliefs form, the body records experiences. If connection once brought emotional overload, the body remembers. If closeness required vigilance, the body remembers. If intimacy felt unpredictable, the body prepares. For a mind shaped by solitude, connection activates alertness, not panic, readiness. The chest tightens slightly. Breathing becomes controlled. Attention sharpens. The body anticipates adjustment. Solitude allows rest. Connection requires regulation. So the nervous system begins to associate quiet with safety, and closeness with effort. This creates confusion. The person may genuinely enjoy people, crave depth, desire intimacy, but after connection, exhaustion follows. Not because the interaction was bad, but because the system worked to maintain balance. This is why connection can feel draining even when meaningful. The body is not rejecting people. It is protecting energy. This is also why advice fails. Just open up. Just let people in. The resistance is not cognitive. It is physiological. Until the nervous system learns that connection can be calm, slow, non-demanding, it will continue to retreat. And that retreat is not failure. It is protection repeating itself long after the danger has passed. Here lives the deepest conflict. The mind shaped by solitude still longs for resonance, for shared silence, for being understood without explanation. But alongside longing lives calculation. How much energy will this take? How much adjustment will be required? How long before recovery is needed? Connection threatens equilibrium. Not because it is harmful, but because it introduces influence. Another person's emotions enter the system. Another rhythm intersects with the inner world. Another gravity pulls attention outward. For someone whose identity is internally anchored, this feels destabilizing. So resistance appears, not as rejection, as hesitation, messages delayed, plans postponed, time alone guarded carefully. This is not manipulation. It is nervous system wisdom operating on old information. Once, closeness demanded too much. So now, the system protects space. Yet loneliness appears. Not as absence of people, but as absence of being known. The person may be surrounded and still feel unseen. This grief is quiet. The grief of depth experienced alone. The grief of connection imagined but rarely inhabited. The fear of connection is not fear of intimacy itself. It is fear of losing regulation. And so the mind stays at the edge, close enough to feel warmth, far enough to remain intact. Awareness does not arrive dramatically. It comes during stillness, after withdrawal, in moments of honest self-observation. Why does this keep happening? And slowly the answer forms. Because it once made sense. Distance is no longer judged as flaw. It is recognized as memory. Protection that stayed longer than danger. This realization softens everything. The inner voice changes. From "what's wrong with me?" to "what did I learn?" Fear becomes information, not identity. There is no urgency to change, no pressure to fix, only understanding. And understanding creates space. Space for compassion. Space for choice. The person is not broken. They are patterned. And patterns can loosen, not through force, but through safety. Healing does not mean abandoning solitude. Solitude remains valuable, grounding, restorative, but connection no longer has to feel like invasion. When approached slowly, connection can coexist with autonomy. Through relationships that respect rhythm, through presence without pressure, through closeness that allows distance without punishment. The nervous system learns through repetition. Moments where connection ends without depletion, where silence is allowed together, where emotions are expressed without demand. Each experience teaches the body something new. That closeness does not equal collapse. That presence does not require performance. That selfhood can remain intact. The system relaxes, not because fear disappears, but because trust grows. Connection becomes less threatening, not intense, not consuming, just shared. Connection does not need to be loud. For a mind shaped by solitude, closeness may always be quieter, slower, more spacious, less consuming, and that is not failure. It is adaptation evolving. Distance does not need to disappear. It needs to become conscious, chosen rather than automatic, gentle rather than rigid. Solitude remains a sanctuary, not a wall. The fear of connection does not need to be conquered. It needs to be understood, because fear that is understood loses sharpness. It becomes a signal, not a sentence. There is no deadline for intimacy, no correct pace, no standard amount of closeness, only the ongoing permission to move toward others, without abandoning the self that learned to survive alone. And sometimes, that balance is connection enough